Hello YouTube and welcome to another draft guide for upcoming sets of Secrets of Strixhaven. Today we will try to cover the Silverquill and we will try to cover on how I see the deck, how I will approach the day one drafting and the way I see archetype being played. Notably, I'm gonna mention like some cards that I feel like could give a different approach towards the archetype, but without further ado, let's dive in. When it comes to Silverquill, I would say that the color pair feels mostly aggressive. There is a lot of small creatures and cheap spells combined, with a decent amount of prepared instant and sorceries, making sure we will be able on triggering our reparty effects. I wouldn't go on saying that the only way of looking this color pair is aggressive, since there are as well some other cards that could possibly a different lane, like a mid-range one, but we will get to them. So without further ado, let's start with the first and more obvious plan, which is, let's say, aggressive plan. So same as in Lordhorde, I would say that the best card to like try to emphasize on when it comes to like this shell is the Graduation Day, which does have a really strong reparty effect. So I wouldn't say that this is like necessary or mandatory, but I feel like it's super good just on having it. That we cannot go wrong on like picking this and trying to play it in this shell. So yet again, I would say that we want to try to like make this card as good as we can. And if it doesn't happen, like I still feel like there is a lot of good creatures in Silverquill that are just good as like standalone. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's necessary to have it, but I think it's just so good to have it because like we will want to trigger a party and then this is just a bonus we have. So let's start with the good creatures that we want to play, and of course show notably good mentions to consider. In general, I would say that we like every good card that has a good reparty effect and every good card that has a good prepared. So let's go and check which ones we like. So yet again, starting with white, Elite Interceptor. I think this one like yet again is super good on having because like it's a 1 mana party that we can get, and then it does have a really good prepared ability that will just be a pretty good card to have in the shell. Quillblade Laureate, yet again, just feels super amazing on having. It's a like I did say the first time, it's a creature that has a pretty good prepared ability, and even if it didn't have it, I think just having a double strike where we can actually attach all our counters on just feels amazing. Lecturing Scorn Mage, 1 mana, 1/1. It does have a really strong reparty ability. Comparing to Lordhorde, now we have more 1-drops, and this one is definitely the one that we would be interested on trying to make as best as we can. Adventurous Eater, a 3 mana, 3/2 that does have a prepared ability, which actually can trigger all our reparties for pretty cheap, and it does like grow our creatures, so I would definitely be interested on playing this one. And I don't think we can go wrong on taking it for this shell. Melancholic Poet is an interesting card that does have a way of like making sure that opponent will keep on losing life while we're casting spells. I kind of like the idea of this one. I think it could be good, but I wouldn't say that it is necessary for Silverquill, but it does feel like it can be good if you're like missing 2-drop. Now we will check the creatures that I think, other than the obvious one, that are gonna be great for the shell, the ones that we should consider on playing. I think the Glyph Mage is pretty good creature to have in general, just like a 4 mana 3/3 that we can actually get another body with it, and like we have multiple creatures that we can actually play around with our counters. It's just generally good to have. Like we might be facing other matches where they don't have much flyers, so the 1/1 can end up on like mattering a lot. Since we are interested on getting a lot of creatures that actually have a decent prepare spell, especially the ones that do cost 1 mana, I think the page is pretty great on having. It's a 4 mana 3/3 that does have first strike, so it will make sure that can it keep on attacking, and the prepared ability on this one is super good for us, so I would definitely be interested on giving this one a go for this shell. Definitely the Rehearsed Debater feels like a solid creature for the 3 mana slot, especially if we do have a lot of cheap instant and sorcery. So yet again, I think this one will be a good consideration in the deck. Even though the Acolyte does not have a prepared spell on it or the reparty triggering, I think just the lifelink on it and being a good creature that can actually carry the counters might be something that we can consider as being good as a 2-drop, and like the ability that it does have can end up on mattering in some weird scenarios, so definitely would be considering on putting this one as a 2-drop for the deck. If you do have a lot of ways of making tokens, this one definitely feels great because it does have the prepared ability, which can keep on being cast, and it does target 2 creatures, and the ability is pretty good, so definitely would keep my eyes on this one. I think the number where I would go for playing this one in a deck would be close to like 6 or 7 creature tokens that I can make on passive abilities. So if that's like a number, like that's like a number, the first number that comes to my mind. Time will tell if that is correct or not, but just like a 3 mana 3/3, you don't go wrong, and the ability of this one, if you can keep on activating it, just is super strong to have. If we are missing other 1-drops, I think the Burg Banemaker is definitely a card we can consider. It's a death toucher, so it will most likely be able on passing through in the spots where the opponent will not be interested on trading with it. The ability of it, I would say that it does feel like it doesn't matter, but yet again, like there are gonna be weird scenarios where we have extra mana, so maybe pumping into this creature is not bad. And yet again, if we are liking 1-drops, definitely we will consider on giving this one a go. So depending on what we can return, we can consider on maybe going for a bit heavier curve and playing this Mancer. It is a 4 mana 4/2, it's a solid stats for a Gravedigger, and the ability of like returning creatures is nice. If you do have a way of unpreparing this card, definitely could be a cute like idea if like the game goes long, having a way of fighting the value war. So since we are really good on surveilling, I think the best creature that we can actually put into a graveyard is the Eternal Student. It is still a solid card that we can play. It does have the stats same as the Gravedigger we just mentioned, but this one has a really good ability once it does hit a graveyard. Getting a 2/1/1 flyers for 2 mana is definitely an ability that we do want to have in mind, so I would give this one a try, especially if we have like a lot of ways of surveilling or like the ways of making sure that this can easily hit the graveyard. This 2-drop is super interesting because the ability of it is really nice and aggressive. For 2 mana it's a 2/2, and if we do get to prepare it, and there are of course ways that we can, this one does deal 2 damage to opponent. So if the deck can't support this one, I would for sure be interested on running it in my aggressive shell. Same as the Leech Collector, I think the Poisonous Apprentice is an amazing creature that we get for the mana, and plus it does kill a creature on opponent control, so if we have a lot of ways of triggering the infusion, we will be interested on playing this one. So the Shadelock Snake Warlock for 5 mana 4/6, at the moment it does enter, it's not prepared, but after getting another turn with this one or on our first main phase, it will become prepared, and the ability of this one is super threatening. Giving a creature for 1 mana +2/+0 death touch is an amazing ability to have, so it definitely is a creature that has to die, and having its 6 toughness on it will just make sure that it will be difficult on opponent dealing with this. Sneering Shadewriter feels amazing for us because we are aggressive and we are interested on closing the game as fast. I think this is a creature that we can consider as our top end. For 5 mana it's a 3/3 flyer, but when it does enter, it does deal 2 damage to opponent and we do gain 2 life. And yet again, it does have that way of making sure infusion could possibly happen. For example, the Lich Collector. And those two together is just like 4 damage for like 6 mana in total. Kinda am interested on this Shopkeeper if we do have a decent amount of ways of triggering the infusion. For 3 mana 2/3 menace is fine, but if we do get an infusion, it's a 3 mana 4/3, and that alone definitely pays for the mana, and it feels super strong on the aggressive plan. So for the Signpost cards, we definitely are interested on getting in our deck Abigail for 3 mana 2/3. Whenever we cast a creature spell, Abigail gets prepared, and the ability of it is for 2 mana. We put a counter on our creature. This definitely feels like an amazing way of making sure we can trigger a party, and alone the stats you get for the mana you pay is definitely something we're interested in. Ink Mage is a card that will be able on helping us going through the deck. So For 3 mana, 3/3 Vigilance, definitely a great attacker, and having a way of going through the deck, as we said, and getting our flashback cards or other creatures we want to be having them in the graveyard is amazing on having. Mascot is, as you can expect, like a pretty great for us, because like it's a 2/2. It feels like it will most of the time be a flyer, and getting a surveil every time we do cast an instant and sorcery, just that alone is nice on having, because it will make sure that we are gonna keep on casting the card. So amazing 2-drop for us. Killian's Confidence, it is a great way of triggering reparty. It does rebuy itself, and it does have a way of returning to our hand. So this one is an interesting card that we definitely want to keep in mind and try it out. I'm not sure how many of them is like too many, but I think like two or three I would give a go, especially if our deck is low to the ground and it can make sure that damage can happen in us returning this to our hand. Comparing to the original Strixhaven, where we did have a Humiliate, this one does cost 2 mana, but it actually puts an additional counter. I'm not quite sure if this is gonna be yet again amazing, because actually 2 extra mana could play a big role. But I still think if your deck is low to the ground aggro, and we can play this as maybe our top end, I don't hate on having this. Like, early in the game it will be 1-for-1, but like we gotta ask ourselves, how are we happy when it comes to like drawing this later parts in the game? Because later parts in the game it will be a 4 mana, just 2 counters, right? So this one is tricky on rating. I cannot really say with guarantee that it is yet again amazing. I will have to play. I guess it will depend on the set. Like if the set is more grindier and it goes to more of the late games, having this as an aggressive deck and always making sure you're gonna be able on taking the removal or the best card is nice. But if the set is like super aggressive, I'm not sure you would wanna play this, since my opponent might just be good enough on dropping their hand already, and then like you have a card that is just 4 mana, 2 counters. So this one we will have to see when the set is released, how it does play. Scolding Administrator, I think this is the best 2-drop we can possibly get. It does have menace. It keeps on growing. We can trigger whenever we trigger the reparty, and if it does die and it hit counters, it just moves them on another creature. So it is an amazing card for us. Possible play pattern which could be interested with this one is when we are about to win the game and this one does have some counters on it, you could actually kill your own creature and just move this counters to another creature. So it is an interesting play pattern that I think will definitely come up with this one. Silverquill Charm. This one has, you can put 2 counters on a target creature for 2 mana, exile target creature with power 2 or less, or each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. I think all 3 mods are amazing. 2 counters make sure that you will win the combat early in the stages. Killing a creature with power 2 or less, I think that there are still a decent amount of creatures that you would want to use this ability on. And if the game is about to end, you can make sure that your opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life, having an additional way of triggering the infuse with this. Snooping Page, 3 mana, 2/3. We have seen cards like this in past, and this one feels amazing because we already want to be able on triggering reparty, and this one seems like a benefit if we are great on doing it, because like we will make sure that this one can connect easily, because it cannot be blocked, and then you get to draw a card and lose a life. I think losing a life will not matter if you're the aggressive one, so just having a creature that can keep on attacking and drawing you cards, while I would say pretty easily getting this one to be unblockable, is an amazing to have. So now we will try to cover the instant and sorceries that we are interested in playing. Dig Side Inventory yet again feels amazing for us, because like it has a way of triggering the reparty for 1 mana, and it does have the flashback. But another way that we can look at this one is that it is a bonus card we get for free, because we have a decent ways of surveilling. So just 1 mana having a way of triggering is great to have, and I think this one will play great for us. I think here again the Rapier Wit is something that we would like. We would like to look at our deck as an aggressive, so having a 2 mana way of tapping a blocker and then redrawing a card while triggering our cards is something that feels good on having. Cost of Brilliance is a pretty cool card because we are actually interested on curving out and playing the cheap cards we have. This one is having a Sign in Blood effect where a target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 lives, so you can actually end up on targeting the opponent if the game is about to end, and then you can put a counter on a creature. So that is interesting because, like, yes, we do pay 1 extra mana for Sign in Blood, but we do get an ability of triggering the party and getting a counter while we are doing so. I think that this action practice is an amazing 1 mana instant that we can end up on playing. It's a pretty cheap way of triggering the party while actually having a Skull Dagger attached. We can kill a creature possibly on the opponent if it is too small, like a pest. And if not, like, still getting a creature +1/-1 in combat is an amazing to have. And on top of that, we make sure the opponent loses 1 life and we have a way of gaining a life. That gaining a life might matter if we do choose on playing some infusion cards. So this one, I would definitely be interested on playing this one in the deck. Masterful Flourish for 1 mana, giving a creature unindestructible, while having a way of triggering all our cards. I mean, we just like the cards that can help us on triggering, and this one can protect our creatures from the removals that are damage based or destruction. So this one is definitely a card that we want to keep in mind while we are making our aggressive deck. So when it comes to removals that we are interested in playing, I think the removals that we always want to prioritize are the ones that can actually target a creature, so we have a way of triggering our reparty. So when it comes to that, I think the Last Grasp is a pretty great to have. -3/-3 is pretty efficient on making sure you will get a kill spell on it, and it will just most likely deal with any early threat that can be played. Foolish Fate is a great removal. It can end up actually on dealing damage to opponent because we can have some like passive ways of generating life. So this one is just great on picking, definitely an upgrade version to a Murder. Wanderoff is a 4 mana exile. It does deal with any creature, but it will depend on like how expensive we want our deck to be. Like we did see, Last Grasp and the other Murder we have as an option are possibly more efficient, but if we don't have those ones a lot, we could actually end up on playing the Wanderoff. I don't hate it, and Exile might end up on mattering. So yet again, same as in Lorehorde, if we do think as our deck is aggressive, we don't want to have a removal that can only be efficient if it does target tap creatures. It can end up on being good if we are racing, but I think the response, I would only play an aggressive shell if I'm lacking removals. But if we do have a decent amount of ways of tapping creatures passively from opponent's end, and then making this an efficient removal, I would not hate on playing it, maybe even in the aggro shell. So as I said, we do want to prioritize removals that can actually target creatures, and End of the Hunt is a removal that does deal with the biggest threat. Most likely the most expensive creature the opponent plays is the card that we do want to deal with, and it is super efficient for 2 mana. I think this is the best edict that we can get, but a problem with this one is that it doesn't trigger our cards. So if we end up on not having removals, I don't hate on playing this one, but yet again, I think we do want to prioritize removals that can actually target the creatures. So overall, the plan of the deck is to curve out, play our 1-drops that are super efficient on attacking, then follow it up with good removal spells while having cards that can possibly keep on drawing and going to the deck and making sure that we can just end the game fast. Even though this is an aggressive deck, I would say that I would still want to play 17 lands here. It is important on hitting the land drops, and comparing to Lorehorde, we're not looting a lot here. Even though we have cards that can rebuy themselves in a way that they can draw, I would say that here, with a Surveil, we can have a way of picking the cards. So I would say it's better on always, if we can Surveil, to surveil lands into graveyard rather than surveilling real cards to try to hit the land drops. When it comes to prioritizing creatures, we definitely do want to prioritize creatures that can have an amazing reparty ability, and we do want to prioritize creatures that are good on triggering the reparty, which means that they have an amazing prepared ability. So I did want to mention the other plan of the deck that can be looked differently. Even though the Silverquill does seem like an aggressive color combination that you want to be playing at aggro, I think there is like a mid-range approach where you could actually try to emphasize on some other cards and like making them as best as they can be. So I have like 2 cards in mind that do seem really great for this shell, and then the other cards that could like fit in decently in this plan. First one is the Forum Necroscribe, 6 mana 5/4. It has a ward ability where the opponent, if they do want to kill it, have to discard a card. And anytime we cast an instant to sorcery, we return target creature card from the graveyard to the battlefield. This one is really powerful because it feels like we have a lot of ways of having the ways of triggering it, and if this one does survive, I'm pretty sure that it can actually just like snowball the game. Funny thing is, if you have like 2 of this, like it feels super unbeatable for the opponent to kill it, and the creatures you can return can have a way of triggering this one again. So I think this is just the card that makes me think that we could maybe consider on looking the Silverquill in a different approach. And another good mid-range card is this 5-drop, which is a 4/5. When it does enter, it does look the X cards when X is the number of creatures we have, and it puts one in hand in the rest into a graveyard. Having a way of putting cards into graveyard will make the other 6-drop that we have mentioned better, and it is just an amazing stats that we can get for the mana we pay. Of course, you could try to play this one in aggressive decks. I don't think you will go wrong with that as well. But I feel like this and the other kind combined just feel like a really amazing mid-range type of deck that we can actually try to draft. Now I will mention the cards that I think will go particularly well with this shell. One card that comes on mind is the Daydream. Daydream is a card that has flashback, and when you cast it, you can actually exile a card, flicker it, and it comes back with a 1/1 count. With the cards we have mentioned, this is a cheap way of triggering the reparty, and it is a free way of triggering the ETB. While you can passively get this in graveyard, it just feels amazing to try the cards combined. And is Debate Moderator, this feels like an amazing 2-drop for this shell, because it does have a way of flickering our creatures, and I would say that it can actually keep on growing. Group Project does feel like a free card for us to play, because we would be interested on playing cards that do have ways of surveilling, so by just casting this or flashbacking it for free, it feels like a free card we can get. I think this Demonstrator would fit in perfectly in this shell, because we would be interested on surviving as long as we can, and this card, even though it doesn't have the highest power, if you can trigger a bit of the reparty on this one, it will get lifelink, and lifelink will mean that we will survive longer. It does have the ward, which will protect it, so this one I would say that in this shell would play really great. If we do have a lot of ways of triggering the research, I would definitely be interested on playing it in this color combination as well. I think the Stone Docent would be good for this one, because we are more interested on being a mid-range type of deck, having a creature that will trade most likely with anything, and then giving us a surveil and the life would feel great for us. I would say the Ostermancer would play better in this version, because we would be having a creature that we can return other creatures and trigger other repartures, so it seems like just a good card for this shell. I think in this version of the deck, even though this is not a creature, we could be considering of playing Virus Beetle. Even though it's not a Virus Beetle, it kind of plays like that. You get a 1/1 pass, which will give you life anytime it does attack, but it will be having a way of taking a card away early in the stages, and I think it plays really well with the possible next card I'm just gonna mention. So I think after playing Send in the Past, the Social Snap would fit in as a good card for us to play. It definitely isn't my favorite type of cards. I never did like the Addict effects in Limited, or if I would play them, I would need them to do something extra. But since we are interested more on the late game approach, if we have cards that we are actually fine on like losing, I would not hate on trying the Social Snap in this version of the deck. So this is another approach that we can go towards the Silverquill. We don't necessarily have to be aggressive, but this one is like we did mention, more mid-rangey. This is definitely a thing that I would like experiment with and try to figure out if it is like a real shell and a real archetype towards the Silverquill. Who knows, maybe better than the aggressive version as well. But with time, I guess I will have the answer for this one. So that will be it for Silverquill. I think the Silverquill, comparing to other two schools we have covered, is more straightforward. As mentioned, maybe there is a different approach towards the deck building, but we will see it soon enough. I hope you did like this video, and if you made it this far, one thing that I would like to ask you is, if you can, leaving a comment, liking the video, and if you can and you want to check more content for future, leaving a subscribe definitely helps. I wish you all the best, and thanks again for watching. Until next time, cheers.